legislature in Kenya over the coming few years. This in itself, this will then create 6 important issues that we need to face. First is to implement the Constitution, not only the letter of the Constitution, but the spirit, so that we can begin to live the Constitution. Because it devolves power and takes away power from the executive, which is something that we've been demanding for the last 20 years. Number 2, there is an insidious relationship that has an impact not only on us in Kenya, but throughout the Horn of Africa, between corruption and security. I mentioned security as the #1 livelihood gap, which is being filled informally in many parts of the country. When you combine that with corruption, you have a situation, you look at what's happening in Somalia and in other neighboring countries, that will have an impact vis-a-vis terrorism and other such issues that not only has regional implications, but I believe global implications. I always remind people that it was Kenya that was attacked first by Al-Qaeda in 1998, before 9/11 in 2001. The third important challenge facing us is youth employment. The informal sector in Kenya employs more than the entire formal sector and the entire agricultural sector, and we call ourselves an agricultural country, combined. So it produces millions of young people into the informal sector. And dignifying this sector is going to be the critical challenge that faces us over the coming 6 to 7 years. Fourth is the environment. You have millions of young people without jobs, and to put it crudely, with nothing to consume, they consume the environment. One of the most surprising things for me, driving across a part of Eastern Province called the Yatta Plateau, which doesn't have many trees, it's quite a dry part of the country, it was in the middle of a drought. And there were lots of little bicycles, all with sacks of charcoal. And I stopped and I asked people, where are you getting where are you getting all this charcoal from? And the little acacias, before they've even become trees, are being burnt into charcoal, which fetches a premium when it is sold in Nairobi. So people consume the environment. Finally, and I think this is something that I get into trouble for a long time in Kenya, we believed in the saying of our former president, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, Rudi Mashambani, which in Swahili means, go back to the land. All of you, go back to the land, become farmers, produce. I believe the era of Rudi Mashambani is ended. It's over. We have some of the fastest growing cities on the continent of Africa in Kenya today. We have what used to be 20% of our land that is arable is now down to around 13%. 80% of our population used to be crammed into that 20%, and we are killing each other over that anyway. When reduced to 13%, the tension is even worse. So the future is in our cities, where the tribes are mixed and where we haven't done much planning, but it's where we've got to invest most heavily in. Kenya is a pressure cooker because all these things are happening at a rapid pace. And I think this is a good thing, because I think Kenyan people are up to it, to be able to take the challenges that they face and turn them into opportunities. We have the versatility to be able to do it. And now with the new constitution, we have the framework. I'll end by saying my own reading of new constitutions is that constitutions are never benign things. They're never just there. They make or break nations. I would like to think, and I would like to work, and I think we should all work to making sure that the new constitution in Kenya is an opportunity that we grasp to make it into something that makes Kenya into what it should actually be. Once again, a leader that we can be proud of on the continent of Africa. Once again, thank you very much to the Royal African Society and the Royal Commonwealth Society for this invitation. I'm looking forward to your questions, There are a range of issues, especially to do with the Constitution, that I would love for us to be able to exchange ideas on. Thank you very much.
John, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to ask Michaela Wrong and then Justin Willis to respond in turn to those points, what we've heard, and then to open the floor, with your agreement, to discussion with all of you generally. At that stage, please, I would urge you, first of all, as you ask a question, to say who you are. Secondly, to keep it to one question, framed in one sentence. No manifestos, no apologies, and we'll try and group questions on particular themes together if we can. Michaela.
Okay, thank you. I hope people can hear me, yes. I'm a journalist, and journalists suffer from chronic cynicism. So I often find myself out of kilter with the way diplomats and analysts and people who know a lot more than I do think we talk about Kenya. And I've noticed this divide opening up. It opened up during the elections of 2003, which I covered. It also opened up during the Kofi Annan negotiations, which brought an end to the violence of 2007, and I feel it opening up now. And I don't know whether that means I'm right to be cynical, because it's partly my job. So this is the way I'm trained to think. But listening to people talking and listening to the coverage, especially here in Britain, where I think the coverage was extremely naive of what was what was being presented in a very complex and fascinating document. I mean, you certainly wouldn't have understood that listening to the BBC and Reuters. You would have just understood that the president's powers are going to be trimmed back, and that there's going to be an end to corruption in Kenya. And I thought, fantastic, but it can't be that easy, surely. So listening to that coverage and watching the way the vote went, I found myself remembering the last time I was very much involved in watching a new constitution being formed, and that was when I was a stringer, freelance reporter in 1994 in what is now Democratic Republic of Congo. And every day I used to go to the Chinese-built building, parliamentary building, where the HCRPT, as it was known, which was the transitional government that had been allowed by Mobutu, was debating a transitional constitution. It went on for months and months and months, and I was constantly filing stories. And I remember talking to the diplomats and saying, there were parliamentarians there who really were very happy to keep going day after day because they were getting their per diems. And I kept talking to diplomats and saying, at the end of the day, is this how a society changes? Is this how things change via a constitutional document? And of course it wasn't, because at the end it was a great delaying tactic that was being used by Mobutu very successfully. The parliamentarians were in no rush at all. There was endless squabbling, and in the end, what finished Mobutu off was the invasion of the AFDL rebel movement from neighbouring Rwanda, and that did for him extremely quickly and extremely thoroughly. So my scepticism was justified in that case. And I do think there is a slight danger here in the West as we watch Kenya, a country that we're always very concerned about, rightly so. I think there's something in particular about here in Britain, perhaps, where I think Anglo-Saxon legalistic minds, and I have one on my right, get fascinated by constitutions and teasing out the niceties and the consequences, and if this happens, then that will happen. And I do sometimes think that there is a danger that we can be a bit too fascinated by these documents, and that we end up taking them a lot more seriously than the Kenyan politicians, the Kenyan policemen, the Kenyan civil servants who will end up enforcing them.